Okay, guys, we're here with head coach Justin Wilcox. He's going to start out by giving you a little bit of news and then take your questions.
Yep. Thanks everybody for joining us. I think the university and the athletic department just released a statement. So you'll probably have some questions about that. Be happy to answer, and then we'll talk about Washington or anything else you want to cover. So fire away.
Hey, go ahead. If you have a question for Coach, please let me know in the chat, and we'll take you in order. I'm going to jump over to the chat here and get started. Yeah, I don't see anybody in there yet, but we'll start with Jeff Ferrato. Jeff, I'm sure you have questions. Please do put it in the chat if you have questions. Thank you.
My question is, I haven't seen the news release because I just got on here and I haven't checked my email in the last couple of minutes. Are you able to tell us what the news is, Coach?
Yeah, I'll summarize. We had our first confirmed positive test as a program since daily testing began in October. He was a positive antigen test and confirmed by a PCR test, which is part of the protocol. And as a result of that, several players were held out of practice and placed in quarantine as a part of contact tracing. And so that is ongoing. We don't know exactly where that's going to lead us, but that happened today, and there should be a release in your inbox here shortly or already. So
yeah, it's in there and was been tweeted, Jeff. So
okay. And if I can ask another question related to this, Justin, obviously the player who tested positive is going to be quarantined for a while.
Yep.
When do you find out if the folks who are in the contact tracing would be available for Saturday?
Hopefully very soon. Tonight, tomorrow, we'll need to know shortly.
And you've obviously prepared for this possibility, but now that it's real, sort of what's the impact emotionally on the team and also with you in terms of making adjustments with your personnel?
Yeah, we knew that this season coming in, there'd be some hurdles. I think the thing to note is the guys have done a really great job managing all this throughout the last 7 months or so, and done a great job in training camp and followed the protocols and processes and been living really well. It's a tricky situation, as we all know. We are glad to report that the one positive is asymptomatic and everybody's healthy, but the result of the contact tracing is significant, and we will hopefully learn in the short term where that leads us, but it's a significant hurdle.
And are your players, what's their reaction been to this?
They found out this afternoon, and we had a practice as scheduled, and we had to make some adjustments to that practice, but they've done a good job. I mean, our guys have done a really nice job throughout this whole time in some unique circumstances to stay focused and have the ability to adjust. And so we're doing that right now. So we will, let this process play out, but time is of the essence, as we know. And as I mentioned, there's one positive test who's asymptomatic, but the contact tracing is a real hurdle.
And that involves about 5 players. Is that what you said?
Several players. I mean, significant number. We can't talk about, for the privacy reasons, we can't talk about who, but I will tell you it's a significant number of players that are in the contact tracing right now. And as I mentioned, it's a major hurdle.
Last thing, is the game Saturday night in jeopardy at all?
I would say that's fair. Yeah, that's fair.
Okay, we'll move on to Emily Ullman with the Daily Cal.
Thank you so much for taking the time tonight. I actually also did not see that information released, and I was planning on asking this question before of just how this is looking like a different week, like maybe how things are shaping up to be a little bit more interesting for this season opener compared to others. Is there like more pressure now? What else has changed, maybe especially in light of the positive test?
It's a season like no other. The lead up was something that we've never done. The camp, all the adjustments that people have had to make in the department, in our football program throughout the country. And more than anything, our team wants to play, and so I think everybody feels that, and there's excitement. We know that there are hurdles. We knew that coming in, and we are faced with it now. And hopefully we'll learn more from the public health officers in the real near future about where this leads us.
And then
Okay.
just one more quick
Go ahead,
follow-up.
Yep.
I was just curious. I know that you and Jimmy Lake go way back. I know the Huskies have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, given the team's winning record against them. And also the expectations are high for them to flip the script a little bit in that capacity. So I was just curious what your top priority against Washington is this weekend.
Yeah, I've known Jimmy a long time. I never worked with him. I worked at Boise State with a lot of those other guys that are there. He's an excellent coach. They've done a great job with the program up there. Played really good defense. Their roster from top to bottom is really strong. They've recruited well for a long time. So we know they're going to have talented players. They're going to be well coached. Ultimately, like it is every week, it's going to be how well can we perform on those, given plays. And that will determine the outcome of the game. We know what kind of team they have and how well they're coached, but it always will come back to us. And I'm really excited for our team, our players. They put in a ton of time, a lot of hard work, and they've stayed very disciplined in some tough moments here. Just really eager for them to have the opportunity to play and us to go out there as a team and compete.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to Jenny McCauley from Associated Press.
Hi, Justin. Thanks for taking the time. Have you already spoken to Washington, to Coach Lake, given this circumstance right now? I know all of this has unfolded in the last couple of hours, but also what were you able to do in practice? You mentioned making adjustments. Were you even able to do 11-on-11 work, or are you able to share any details of what you did accomplish today on the field?
I have not talked to Jimmy. Again, this has been such a fluid situation throughout the day. I know our athletic director has spoken to their athletic director. So, we are led by the public health officials. And so our university, and that's not me, I'm not talking to the public health officials. The university athletic department has contacts with them. So we went to practice and we did the best that we could. There are certain things we could not do and certain team periods we could not do today. We're looking forward to have the chance to hopefully do that tomorrow.
Okay. Janie, are you good or anything else? Okay. Trace, did you have another question? I've got you in my chat as well.
Yeah, it does feel kind of odd to ask about football in the light of this, but you have if this game does end up being played, you still have Washington, who you guys have been relatively close with the last couple of times you've played them. What's your expectation of what they're going to do offensively?
That's a great question, Trace. We've spent a lot of time on video from different places. We know there's different styles and backgrounds there with their new offensive coordinator, and then some of the continuity on the staff. Their offensive line coach, who does a heck of a job. He's been, he's a Boise State guy way back in the day. The running back coach, the receiver coach has been there. So, we don't have certainty, and I'm sure there'll be wrinkles that we haven't seen. But we've done a lot of work on and doing the best we can to kind of prepare. But as I mentioned before, ultimately in a first game, you always go in with kind of enough, but you don't want to have such a big plan that you got 87 calls and you don't have enough time to rep all those. I think you got to guard against that in a first game, or especially when there's a coordinator change. So we'll go in, and if we need to adjust on the fly, then we'll do that. But we've watched a lot of video. That's kind of what we do in the off season, and sometimes we got to guard against ourselves of, having too many things specific for what might happen. You start chasing ghosts, we call it. So want to go out there and play with a really tight game plan and be able to adjust as needed.
Thank you.
Okay, Rusty Simmons from the Chronicle.
Coach, I was going to ask you about what you've learned from around the country. I know you have so many friends in coaching, and I'm thinking about Wisconsin specifically, but you can tell me anything. What have you learned about how other teams are dealing with this situation?
How fragile it is, and everybody's trying to do the right things first and foremost by looking out for the players and the processes. And we've had such a really clean, defined process of how we're trying to mitigate all the risks that we possibly can, and knowing that there isn't a perfect solution, because if there was, then everybody would be doing it. It's not something that people would be keeping a secret, because this is obviously bigger than football. So we're doing the best that we can. And there's people that are in charge of laying those plans out, and our role is to follow them as best we possibly can. And I think everybody's trying to do that throughout the country. I think the different regions, different cities, different areas, even throughout the West Coast, there's the public health officials may have different interpretations here and there. And then I think that's where people, you can get frustrated at looking, why is it like this in one place and not the other? There's a lot of questions that we all have that there aren't a lot of answers to. I don't think there's any one person to fault there. It's just everybody's trying to figure it out the best they can. So that's what probably makes it a bit difficult at times for people when there's, there are inconsistencies on how it's being dealt with. So.
Thank you.
Jake Curtis from SI.
Yeah, Justin, I know the rules about being able to play games with a certain number of people not eligible to play because of the COVID. Have you investigated that and how that might affect you?
Yeah, I'm well aware of the rules in terms of the availability of players. Is that what you're saying, Jake?
Yeah.
Yeah, well aware of those.
Okay. Have you investigated how that will affect what you're trying to do? I mean, is that a possibility, or are there too many guys involved that that's not even an issue?
Could you clarify the question?
Okay. I know that you can play a game with some people being out because of testing positive. Have you thought about playing the game with X player not being available and things like that?
Yeah, if it's all possible for us to play, we're going to play. If it is feasible for us to play, we're going to play the game. I'll tell you that much.
Okay.
So are there hurdles? There are hurdles, Jake. Yes.
Yeah. And have you adjusted your plan based on that possibility, based on the players you know are in question?
Well, as somebody mentioned before, with the players in question, the game is in jeopardy.
Right. But have you, I'm sorry, maybe I'm not making myself clear here. But have you changed your game plan based on the fact that certain players won't be there while other players will be, and you can still play the game?
Yeah. If we have the bodies available to play the game, we will play. But as I mentioned before, several people are being held out, and that's a legitimate threat to the game.
Okay.
So there are certain positions, as you know, you just asked the question, and there are guys, that falls in line with what's happening. Yeah. So there are issues there. That's where we're at.
Okay. Anybody else have a final question for Coach? Please let me know in the chat. We'll give you a couple more seconds. Okay, seeing no other questions, I think we're good. So thank you, Coach.
Thanks.
Thank you.